She offered her seat to a father and son on the train. The single dad CEO didn't leave her life after that. The late afternoon train was packed as usual. Monday, peak hour, every inch of space taken. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly overhead. Most passengers stood silent, absorbed in their phones, earbuds in, thoughts elsewhere. Daniel stood near the center of the car, cradling his 6-year-old son Max, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. His little body was limp with exhaustion. Daniel adjusted his grip slightly, careful not to wake him. There were no seats. None. Even a woman with a cane had to lean against the side of the door. Still, no one looked up. Daniel didn't expect sympathy. He had chosen this routine deliberately. Every day after school, he picked Max up and took the train home, refusing the offer of a driver. "I want him to grow up grounded," he had once told his assistant. "He should know what the world feels like on the ground." But this was pushing it. A sudden jolt made the train lurch. Daniel gripped the pole with one hand, tightening his hold on Max with the other. Then, from a nearby seat near the door, a voice rose, a soft but clear tone that cut through the still air. "He looks like he could use the rest. I'm getting off in a minute anyway." Daniel turned toward the voice. A young woman, blonde hair pulled back loosely, eyes a little tired but bright with kindness, was already rising from her seat. Her tote bag slid down her shoulder as she stepped aside. She didn't wait for a response. Daniel blinked. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low, surprised. She nodded, already stepping toward the doorway area to stand. Then, a sharp ding overhead. "Attention passengers. Due to signal issues ahead, this train will be delayed approximately 30 minutes. We apologize for the inconvenience." A collective groan spread through the car. Phones lit up, heads shook. The young woman looked at the announcement board, sighed softly, then steadied herself by grabbing a hanging strap. Daniel stood frozen for a second, processing it all. He leaned slightly toward her. "You can sit. I'm okay, really." She glanced back, smiled gently, and shook her head. "He's safe, and that's enough for now." Daniel looked down at Max, whose cheek was pressed against his shoulder. Then he looked up at her again. There was no pity in her face, no need for attention, just quiet purpose. They didn't speak after that. For the next 25 minutes, she stood while others shifted and complained around her. Her gaze occasionally drifted to the window, unfocused. She didn't fidget or pull out a phone. She simply waited. Daniel sat with Max in his lap, glancing at her every so often. He couldn't help it. There was something about her. Something unbothered, soft, but unbreakable. When the train finally jerked forward again, she adjusted her bag on her shoulder and exhaled slowly. Daniel leaned forward. "Thank you," he said again, a little more firmly. She looked at him, her blue eyes clear and kind. "You're welcome." The train screeched into the next station. She stepped off quickly, blending into the stream of people exiting onto the platform. Daniel stayed seated, holding Max close. As the doors closed, he looked out at her one last time, catching the last glimpse of her blonde hair disappearing into the crowd. She hadn't asked for thanks. She hadn't waited for acknowledgement, but in that moment, he knew he would remember her. Not because of the seat, but because she had given it, like it meant everything, and then walked away like it was nothing. The next morning, Daniel stepped into the sleek glass building of a mid-sized design firm, one of his company's potential creative partners. His assistant had arranged a last-minute meeting to finalize contract terms for a branding project. He was tired. Max had woken up twice in the night, crying about a dream involving trains and missing people. Daniel had held him until he drifted back to sleep, then stared at the ceiling for an hour afterward. He barely noticed the receptionist as he walked in, but as he entered the conference lounge, something caught his attention. More accurately, someone. There, by the coffee station, pouring hot water into a mug with steady hands, was the woman from the train. She looked slightly different in her office attire, still simple, her blonde hair now clipped back, a soft cardigan over a plain blouse, but it was unmistakably her. Daniel paused mid-step, his mind filled with the memory, her hand reaching for the overhead strap, her voice saying, "He's safe, and that's enough for now." She was here, and apparently working in the very company he was about to finalize a partnership with. She didn't notice him. She placed the mug on a tray and walked it over to a nervous young intern who had just been scolded by a stern man in a navy suit, clearly a superior. "Hey, take a breath," she said softly to the intern. "You're doing great. One mistake doesn't erase all your good work." The intern blinked back tears and nodded. The man in the suit glared, but Lily remained calm. Daniel watched it all from behind the glass wall, saying nothing. Throughout the meeting, Daniel found himself stealing glances outside the conference room. Lily never stopped moving, delivering printouts, organizing notes, offering soft reassurances. She never raised her voice, never pushed for attention, but her presence was constant and comforting. When the meeting concluded, Daniel stood by the exit as the others filed out. Lily came in briefly to collect the leftover materials. Their eyes met, briefly. She smiled politely, the way you'd smile at any stranger in a suit. He said nothing, just nodded. That evening, back at his own office, Daniel sat at his desk long after most of his staff had gone home. He pulled open the company's internal contact list and found the name, Lily Hart. There was an anonymous suggestion box for internal morale notes. Most people used it to complain about slow Wi-Fi or stale bagels. He clicked it open and typed, "You made the worst morning of my week a little more human. Thank you, Miss Seatgiver." He hit send. The next morning, Lily arrived at her desk to find a small white paper bag neatly folded on top of her planner. Inside was a freshly baked scone, blueberry, still warm, and a note written in careful handwriting. "You deserve to start your day with something warm." There was no name, no signature. She looked around, slightly startled. The rest of the office was its usual mix of tired yawns and shuffling feet. No one seemed to be watching her. She turned the note over. Blank on the back. She smiled, just a little, and tucked the note into the back pocket of her planner. It had been a rough few days. Her mother's hospital bills had piled up, the landlord had called again, and she had started to fear that her contract at the firm wouldn't be renewed. But this tiny kindness? It shifted something inside her. Later that day, the same stern supervisor berated another junior employee during a presentation. Lily quietly stood up, walked to the young woman's side, and handed her a missing document the boss had been demanding. "Here it is," she said, voice steady. "No need to yell. We've got each other's backs here." The tension in the room eased just slightly. From outside the hallway, Daniel watched through a crack in the door, unseen. He didn't say anything, but in that moment he knew one thing with complete certainty. She had given up a seat once, but she was the kind of woman who never sat down when it truly mattered. The train doors hissed open at 7:43 a.m. Lily stepped inside, squeezing past commuters in suits and teenagers with oversized headphones. Her cardigan, slightly faded at the sleeves, hung loose over her shoulders. In one hand she held a styrofoam container from the charity kitchen, breakfast she hoped would last her until tomorrow. Her eyes, lined with exhaustion, scanned for a handrail. She clung to it, swaying as the train lurched forward. With her free hand she opened her phone. A new message from the landlord. Final notice. Payment required by Friday. She switched apps. The hospital bill had updated. The total climbed by another $620.00 overnight. Lily sighed and quickly typed a message to her little sister. "Don't drop your class. I'll figure something out. I always do." She tucked the phone away, jaw tight. Her stop was 10 stations away. 10 chances to think of a miracle. At Station 7, a small tug on her sleeve broke her thoughts. "Hey!" A familiar bright voice chirped. Lily looked down. It was the boy from the train, Max. His eyes sparkled with recognition as he pointed excitedly. "You're the lady from the train! The one who gave me your seat!" Lily blinked, surprised, then broke into a warm smile. And you're the sleepy little guy who needed it. Max beamed. I wasn't sleepy, I was just resting my eyes. Daniel stood a few feet behind him, his expression calm, but his eyes held a flicker of something, recognition, and something gentler beneath it. Good morning, he said, giving Lily a respectful nod. Good morning, she replied, her voice slightly breathless, caught off guard. They stood together as the train continued. Max insisted on standing close to Lily, occasionally holding her hand and telling her about his favorite comic book. She listened, laughed, and asked questions like she had known him forever. The three stood close, a soft triangle of warmth in a sea of cold shoulders and averted eyes. After a few minutes of Max's chatter about dinosaurs and dreams, Daniel glanced sideways at Lily. Her smile was bright, but there was something off, a tension around her mouth, a tightness in her brow. He waited a moment, then asked gently, "Rough morning?" She blinked at the question. Her smile faltered, then dropped altogether. "A bit," she admitted, then looked down. "My mom's in the hospital. She's been there a while." "I'm sorry," Daniel said, sincerely. "She's stable," Lily added quickly, almost defensively, "but the bills are piling up and I'm just trying to keep up." Daniel studied her face, how hard she was trying to sound okay. "And work?" he asked. "I'm on contract. It ends soon," she replied, trying not to mess it up, but, "Yeah, it's a lot." Daniel nodded slowly, saying nothing else, but the lines between his brows deepened. When the train neared her stop, Lily gently pulled her hand away from Max's and smiled. "Thank you for brightening my ride," she said. Max grinned. "Are you riding again tomorrow?" "I might be. We'll look for you," he called out as she stepped off. Daniel watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. That afternoon, back in his office, Daniel sat quietly for a long time. Then he opened his laptop, pulled up a secure medical assistance system, and typed in Margaret Hart. It took some work, but he found the hospital. He contacted their billing department directly. "I'd like to anonymously settle the current outstanding balance," he said. "Please ensure no identifying information is shared." The hospital staff complied. 2 days later, Lily returned to the hospital during her lunch break, a small wad of bills in her purse, every dollar she had scraped together. "I'd like to make a payment for Margaret Hart," she said. The clerk tapped on her keyboard. "Oh," she said, glancing up. "It looks like her account was paid this week, in full." Lily froze. "What? By who?" The woman smiled kindly. "An anonymous donor. Sorry, we can't say more." Lily stood still for a moment, then stepped outside. She leaned against the hospital wall and pressed a hand to her heart. Someone had helped, and not just a little. They had saved her mother's treatment for the week, for no reason, without asking anything in return. The next morning, the train pulled up again, and so did Daniel and Max. Lily stepped on, her steps lighter than usual. "You look brighter today," Daniel said. She grinned. "Someone paid my mom's bill, an anonymous donor. I don't know who it was, but they gave us time and hope." Daniel didn't respond right away. He just watched her quietly. "I believe kindness ripples," she said. "I want to be that ripple for someone else, someday." Daniel looked at her with a softness that hadn't been there before. "You deserve good things, Lily," he said gently, "even when they come from strangers." Lily paused, her breath caught, just for a second. She met his eyes, and for the first time in years she felt something stir, something warm and uncertain, but real, a connection, a beginning. The meeting room buzzed with tension. Greg, the department head, paced in front of the projector screen while the rest of the staff sat silently, eyes flickering between documents and coffee mugs. A nervous intern fumbled a report, causing a light thud. Greg snapped. "Maybe if you had half a brain you'd know where page 2 is," he barked. The room froze. Lily looked up sharply. Her chair scraped slightly as she stood. "Sir, that's not okay," she said, voice firm but calm. "We're all under pressure, but basic respect is non-negotiable." Greg turned to her slowly, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me?" "You humiliated her in front of the entire team," Lily continued, gesturing to the intern, who now stared at the floor, blinking back tears. "That's not leadership." Greg's face darkened. "You think you're in a position to lecture me?" "I think I'm in a position to say what's right," she said quietly. "Pack your things, Lily," he snapped. "You're done here." Silence fell. No one moved. No one spoke. No one defended her. Then the glass door opened. Footsteps, quiet but decisive. Daniel Carter stepped into the room, his presence like a sudden cold wind. Everyone turned. The color drained from Greg's face. "Mr. Carter, sir, we didn't expect you until—" Daniel raised a hand, cutting him off. He looked directly at Lily, who stood still, trembling slightly but with her chin high. He turned to Greg. "You're firing the only person in this room brave enough to stand up for someone else," he said, voice low and sharp. "You've just lost your best asset." Greg opened his mouth, but no words came out. Daniel's tone was calm, measured, but it hit like thunder. "Let me be very clear," he continued. "Respect is not optional in any workplace I associate with. If your leadership style depends on silence and fear, then I will take my business elsewhere." The staff shifted uncomfortably. Greg swallowed hard. Daniel turned back to Lily. Their eyes met. In that second, everything shifted. Lily's mind spun. He's the CEO? He's that Daniel Carter? Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She felt like she was watching from outside her own body. He remembered her. He stood up for her. And he didn't just do it privately, he did it in a room full of people who never had. After the meeting, Daniel caught up to her near the elevator. "I meant what I said in there," he told her, quietly. "And I have a proposition." Lily blinked. I'm just someone who gave up a seat." Daniel gave a small smile. "No, you're someone who doesn't sit back when things go wrong. That's the kind of person I need." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. There was no corporate armor in his gaze, just sincerity. She swallowed hard, nodding. "I don't know if I'm enough for what you do," she said, almost in a whisper. "You're enough," he said. "You were the moment you stood up today." They shook hands in the hallway, her palm still trembling in his. Around them, a few employees lingered, watching in awe. One whispered, "Is that her? The woman from the train? The girl who always brought 2 coffees to morning meetings, even when she barely had enough for lunch. The quiet one who smiled, even when no one noticed her. Now she was the woman the CEO personally offered a job to. It was not the fairy tale of a prince rescuing a commoner. It was something better. It was recognition. And Lily had never felt more seen. Lily had become a familiar presence in Daniel's home. Most evenings, when he had to stay late at work, she would come over to watch Max. She cooked simple dinners, mac and cheese with a hint of nutmeg, vegetable soup the way her mother used to make it. Max adored her. Daniel often returned to the scent of something warm, the sound of laughter echoing down the hallway. Daniel never crossed boundaries. He remained polite, respectful, often silent, but there was a depth in his gaze when he watched her pour juice or braid Max's hair before bedtime. Sometimes he would offer her tea and they would talk about Max, books, even the absurdity of subway delays. And slowly, Lily began to notice something shift inside her. At first, it was the way her heart skipped when Daniel smiled at something she said. Then it was the way she missed the sound of his voice on days he worked from another office. She caught herself watching his hands when he gently brushed Max's bangs away, or when he rested them on the kitchen counter, waiting for coffee to brew. She told herself it was silly. He was a CEO, a widower. He lived in a world of tailored suits and boardrooms. She was just the woman who had given up her seat on a train. "This isn't your place," she would whisper to herself on quiet nights. "Don't fall." Then came the letter. One evening, after she tucked Max into bed and began clearing the kitchen, she noticed a white envelope on the table, her name handwritten. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was steady, masculine. "You made my house feel like home again. Please don't be just a guest." Her breath caught. She looked around. The living room was dim, empty. Daniel's study door was closed. She clutched the letter, her pulse racing. Without thinking, she slipped it into her coat, grabbed her bag, and walked to the front door. Max peeked from the hallway. "Where you going?" She forced a smile. "Something came up, sweetheart. I'll see you soon." She left before Daniel could step out of his study. At home, Lily sat on the floor of her tiny bedroom, the letter still in her lap. Her heart ached, but not from pain, from fear. Her mother noticed the stillness in her daughter's face. "What happened?" she asked gently. Lily handed her the letter. After reading it, her mother set it down with a smile. "Are you afraid because he cares, or because you do?" Lily did not answer. She looked down. Her mother leaned forward, voice soft. "If someone truly cares for you, they won't let you stay outside the door. They'll open it and wait." Across town, Daniel sat in his study, the untouched dinner still warm on the counter. He held a light scarf Lily had left behind. It smelled faintly of vanilla and rain. He stared at his phone, typing, deleting, typing again. Had he pushed too far? Had he misunderstood everything? He opened his messages again and typed, "If I scared you, I'm sorry, but I've never been more certain about someone." Then he didn't send it. At the same moment, Lily picked up a pen and began to write. She wasn't sure if she would send the letter, but her hand moved as if it had waited too long to speak. "I never thought I'd matter this much in anyone's home," she wrote. "And it terrifies me how much yours has started to feel like mine." That night, both hearts lay awake in two different rooms, clutching unspoken words and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the other still felt the same. 2 days had passed since Lily read Daniel's note. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about it, or him. That afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the fabric of a soft beige dress. Simple, gentle, just like her. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the tall glass doors to Carter Industries. She had never entered this building as anything more than an assistant, but today she was stepping in as herself, with everything laid bare. Her heart thudded in her chest. She walked slowly through the lobby, took the elevator, and followed the hallway to his office. And then she saw him. Daniel was inside, standing close to a young woman, stylish, beautiful, laughing at something he had just said. He smiled back, warm and relaxed. Lily froze. For a moment, the world slipped from beneath her feet. The light in her chest dimmed. Of course. Why would he wait? Why would he choose her? She turned sharply, tears welling up before she could stop them. In her haste, she brushed past a table in the hallway, sending a tray of coffee cups crashing to the floor. The sound echoed through the office. Daniel looked up instantly, eyes narrowing. He stepped to the doorway just in time to see Lily's figure disappearing down the corridor. "Lily?" he called. The young woman beside him looked surprised. "Isn't that—" "She's why I wrote the note," he whispered, before excusing himself and hurrying after her. He found her in the lobby, wiping at her eyes, her body stiff with embarrassment. "Lily, wait," he said, breathless. "Please." She turned, pain etched on her face. "I shouldn't have come?" He stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. "That woman, she's my cousin. She just flew in from London this week." "We were catching up." Lily blinked. "Your cousin?" Daniel nodded. "I wasn't expecting you, but I hoped. God, I hoped you'd come." He reached for her hand. "I'd been waiting for you." She stared at him. Her lip trembled. "I thought I could walk into your world," she whispered. "But I saw her, and it reminded me, I don't belong there." Daniel shook his head, his grip tightening just a little. "You stepped into our life the moment you gave up your seat on that train," he said. "I've been the one trying to catch up with you ever since." A tear slid down her cheek. "I was so afraid," she said. "You have everything. I'm just trying to survive." He cupped her face gently, eyes shining. "You're everything Max and I didn't know we needed." And in that moment, something shifted. The air stilled. The chaos of the world outside paused. They fell into an embrace, quiet, real, grounding. The storm that had built between them over days, weeks, maybe even lifetimes, finally passed. No grand declarations, just silence, and the truth it carried. Lily looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "No more running." Daniel smiled, brushing a thumb against her cheek. "No more hiding." They stood there, surrounded by strangers and office noise, but in their own stillness they had finally found it. Home. They did not announce it. They did not need to. It was in the way Daniel reached for her hand at breakfast, in the way Lily placed Max's favorite fruit slices in the shape of a smiley face every morning, in the way Max clung to her waist as they watered the plants in the tiny garden behind their new house. It was not a mansion. Daniel had dozens of properties, but this was the only one he had ever chosen for his heart. A modest house with ivy crawling over white bricks. A mailbox Lily painted with Max. A wooden fence Daniel repaired himself, crooked in places but sturdy. "This," Daniel had said, handing her the keys, "is not a palace, but I hope it feels like a beginning." Lily moved in the following week. One afternoon, Max fell and scraped his knee while racing down the driveway. He cried out, and Lily rushed to him, arms wide, voice calm and soothing. As she cleaned the wound and kissed the bandage, Max looked up at her and whispered, "Thanks, Mom." The word hit Lily like sunlight after rain. She looked at Daniel, who nodded softly from the porch, his eyes warm with silent pride. Lily opened a small illustration class in the living room on Saturdays, mostly kids from the neighborhood. Crayons, laughter, tiny hands smudged with paint. Daniel became her biggest fan. The first drawing she hung up was a watercolor of Max with his arms spread wide under a paper sky. Daniel had it framed and placed in his office above his desk. "Because this," he said, tapping the corner of the frame, "is what I come to work for now." One bright afternoon, Daniel accompanied Lily to the hospital to visit her mother. She was doing better now, more color in her cheeks, more hope in her voice. They brought flowers and chocolate. Lily sat beside the bed, chatting softly. Daniel stood quietly, offering his presence more than words. At one point, the doctor entered and began discussing the latest test results. "All readings are positive. We'll maintain the current treatment plan." Daniel nodded and asked, "Any updates on the insurance side? We covered the final round, right?" Lily froze, slowly turned to him. The doctor blinked. "Oh, yes, Mr. Carter confirmed it last month." Lily tilted her head, a knowing smile forming. "So it was you?" Daniel blinked, caught. "I knew that warm coffee and warm heart came from the same place," she teased gently. He chuckled, sheepish, scratching the back of his neck. I just did what I had to do." He looked at her, eyes softening. "Maybe a little early, because I knew one day I'd be your husband." Lily's mother grinned from the hospital bed. "Took you long enough to admit it." They all laughed, light, full, healing laughter. Later that evening, the three of them sat together on the back porch, Lily, Daniel, and her mother, wrapped in quiet joy, the kind that grows not from grand gestures, but from quiet choices made daily. Max popped his head out the back door. "Are we having pancakes for dinner again?" Lily laughed. "Why not? It's Sunday." Daniel looked at her and mouthed, "Thank you." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "We made this, didn't we?" He nodded. One small choice at a time, and as the sun dipped low behind their little garden, as laughter and love filled every crack of the life they built, a quiet truth settled over them all. Family does not require blood, just heart, and the courage to stay. The wedding was not in a ballroom. There were no chandeliers, no violin quartets, no 7-tier cake. Just a garden, blooming quietly behind the house, where Lily and Max once planted vegetables in crooked rows and laughed over muddy hands. Guests filled the rows of wooden chairs, friends from the neighborhood, children from Lily's art class, Daniel's colleagues who now looked at him with a new kind of respect and nurses from the hospital who had seen the gentlest side of his heart. There were no grand decorations. Lily wore a simple, flowing white dress picked with love by Daniel's mother, a woman who had once been wary, but now stood proudly beside Lily's. Max was the best man. As he took Lily's hand to walk her down the aisle, he leaned in and whispered, "You're already my mom, but now the world will know." Daniel stood at the altar in a navy new suit, heart pounding not with nerves but with certainty. He had never looked more at home than in that moment, watching the woman who changed his life walk toward him with the boy they both loved. They exchanged vows under the arch Max had helped decorate with painted cardboard stars. "I don't promise a life without storms," Daniel said, voice steady, "but I promise you'll never face one alone again." Lily, eyes glistening, took a breath. "I may not come from your world, but I'll spend the rest of my life building ours, together." There was silence, then applause, not loud but full of soul. Lily's mother, seated in the front row, wiped her tears and reached for Daniel's mother's hand. The two women shared a look that said everything. Love had done what years could not. It had made them one family. After the ceremony, Lily stood before the children in her art class, many still holding crayon drawings of the bride and groom. "One day," she said, "I gave up a seat on a train, and I got a place in a family. Never think small acts don't matter." She turned and embraced Max and Daniel, her arms encircling the two hearts she never dreamed would belong to her. Daniel leaned in and whispered into her ear, "Turns out, the best seats in life are beside the ones we choose to love." As the sun dipped lower, guests were handed a small keepsake, an old-style train ticket encased in glass. On it were the words, "Love begins when someone gives you a seat and stays." The camera spun gently through the garden, laughter, clinking glasses, children running barefoot, an old radio playing classic love songs. And then it was morning. Lily stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee as light poured in through the windows. Daniel, outside, hammered away at the fence, half competent but fully committed. Max zipped by on his bike, helmet askew, laughter trailing behind him like wind. Lily looked out the window and whispered, "We weren't born a family." Daniel came in behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and replied softly, "But we chose to become one." From the yard, Max yelled, "And I wouldn't trade mine for anything." The camera paused on the living room wall. There, framed in a place of honor, was a picture of the three of them on their wedding day. Below it hung an old pressed train ticket, the seat that started it all. Thank you for staying with us through this heartwarming journey. From a single act of kindness on a crowded train, to a love that rebuilt a family and restored a home. Lily and Daniel's story reminds us that the smallest decisions can lead to the biggest blessings. That courage can be quiet, and love often enters not with fireworks, but with gentle hands and a place beside you. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or maybe brought a tear to your eye, please consider subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. Here, we celebrate the power of compassion, resilience, and the extraordinary moments hidden in ordinary days. Click subscribe, share this story with someone you love, and remember, the seat you offer today might be where love finds you tomorrow. Until next time, take care of your heart, and keep believing in beautiful beginnings.